Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Next Dev FM. My name is Ryan Vogel, and I'm joined by my co-host here.
Dan Guswin.
Now, Dan, I was reviewing the work on Cursor Link earlier today, and this guy commented named Code Rabbit AI, and he started doing code review. Was that you?
No, it's our newest intern. You haven't heard?
No, no. What did they do?
CodeRabbit is automated code reviewing tool. It does the LLM reviews automatically on each PR, and let me tell you, man, it's pretty good.
Yeah, I can tell these reviews are impeccable. Uh, I guess they could check it out at devlink.run/coderabbit and try it out for all open source repos. They can get it for free. Isn't that crazy?
That's awesome.
Anyways, let's bring forward our beloved guest today, Lee Robinson. Lee, how you doing?
I'm doing well. How are y'all?
Doing good, doing good. So, give us the 2-minute intro. Welcome to Next Dev, and just give us the 2-minute intro of who you are, what you do, and yeah, we'll go from there.
Great. Sounds good. So I was thinking about this yesterday. I've been coding for 15 years, writing code, and have been teaching how to code for the last half already now. So time has flown by since making that career transition. Started doing a lot of work in open source and teaching people on my own, and then got pretty active in the React and Next.js community, was using React for a few jobs prior to eventually joining Vercel and working on Next.js, and did that for 5 years. And just as of a few months ago, have joined Cursor to work on all things developer experience and just generally help teach how to code with AI.
That's awesome. Yeah, AI is definitely the new wave of like developer toolkitting and experience. And I'm sure we'll jump into that a lot on this episode.
Yeah. As you said, you've been working in education and sort of developer advocacy for a while now. How'd you end up in this line of work?
Yeah, I didn't intend to to set out doing this type of work. I kind of stumbled into it, but in a strange roundabout way, it all makes sense. I've heard somebody describe that the things that you do when you're like 12, 13, 14 years old and you obsess over and that you spend all your time and energy doing somehow end up being things that you do later in life as well. And when I was 12 years old, I was playing a lot of video games and editing videos for video games. So I was very into online forums and video games and editing videos and learning about 3D rendering and After Effects and Photoshop. And at the time, I thought I was going to be a graphic designer, but then eventually decided, oh, I like computers. I think I'm going to do this programming thing. Over the years, as I got a job as a software engineer, I liked writing code, but I didn't like writing code for the sake of writing code. I liked building things. So code was just a means to building whatever I thought was interesting. And for me, websites, web applications was my favorite medium for code because it was very easy for me to take a link, share it with somebody, see that thing live and just online around the world very easily. And about 2017, 2018, I started doing a lot of writing and then videos on the things I was learning at the job. So as I was writing React code as a software engineer for my day job, I would search the internet and I would find things or not find things. And I would write up how I made the solution, in a pre-AI world. Those articles were really helpful. So I started doing that and I ended up making a few courses teaching how to build React applications going into 2019 and 2020. And at the time, Next.js was not very popular. It started in 2016. And when I had adopted it at work in, let's call it 2018, it was still pretty new. I would search online to try to find things and couldn't really find much. The community was kind of just getting started. So I started to make a bunch of videos and tutorials about how Next.js works, to the point where when you would search like Next.js tutorial, it was basically just all my stuff because there was nobody else really making a lot of stuff at the time. So the Vercel team then reached out and was like, hey, do you want to do this as your job? And I hadn't ever really considered doing that as a job. I thought in my head that in 10, 15, 20 years, I would be a senior staff expert distinguished engineer at just writing a bunch of code. I didn't think that I would kind of fork into this path of doing developer education. But in hindsight, it actually makes a lot of sense because I've always felt that it was more about just building something interesting. And I liked being on the fringes of how software development was made. So things like product management or technical documentation or teaching people about how the actual products are built and how they work. It was always a little bit more than just writing the code. Same thing with design. So it wasn't intentional, but I'm glad I landed here.
Oh
It's
yeah.
interesting because a lot of DevRels have often said that same type of thing where it's like, I didn't expect DevRel to be a job. Because if you really think about like the core thing, it's you're teaching, you're enjoying building stuff, you're not just focusing on the code, and you're making content and videos. And who wouldn't love that job? And that's how I got into it. They were like, hey, would you like to do this for your job? And I'm like, yes. I didn't know that was an option.
Yeah.
I didn't see that button in the drop down, and it's very interesting to see how DevRel has evolved over the years. And you definitely helped build the public perception of DevRel at Vercel, and you grew the Next.js development community to millions and millions of devs. Um, did you have like a sort of formula or system that you came up with to essentially guide yourself to have this sort of structured teaching method?
Yeah, I think, well, first, just to echo your point around it wasn't on the drop down. Like I didn't know that this was an option, especially coming out of college, university. Like they they don't really do, at least where I went to university, like they don't talk as much about the other roles that are still doing software but are not a software engineer. So I didn't really
Yeah.
know this existed. Um, but I think that the common thread amongst a lot of people who end up in DevRel work is that they have experience as a software engineer. They've been building production software at some point. And then a little bit down the road, they end up kind of transitioning into something like this. It's much easier to do it that way than to start trying to teach people without having that applied experience of here's this time where I had to debug this really gnarly error, or, you know, I wrote this really wild code back in the day. Like my first internship was writing C# code and doing a lot of tests. So I was basically doing a QA engineer role. I was
Ooh,
writing a
the
lot of tests. I
trenches,
was doing
yeah.
a lot of C#, and I didn't know what I was doing. I was just totally figuring it out as I went. This was a long time ago back in college. But yeah, it's funny to see how it kind of transitions over time. But going back to DevRel at Vercel and Next.js, I think the thing that I tried to do was show people what the art of what is possible. Show people what you can build with this technology. Next.js is a tool that you can use for anything. You can build any type of website, any type of web application. So with that, great power comes a lot of potential ambiguity. Like, what am I going to build with this thing? I can do anything with it. So to try to show how the features work and to get people excited about what we're building, it was helpful for me to build demos that were both practical but also polished and exciting. It was what actually got me interested in taking the role at Vercel in the first place, because they had done a very good job about making demos that showed the technology that were not just throwaway demos. They were actual real applications where you could go look at the code and you're like, oh, this is actually structured pretty well. I learned something from reading this code. It had a nice design. It was very practical. And you'd look at it and you would start to think, wow, I just have so many ideas for things that I can build now. And those are the best type of advocacy / demos, I think, is you kind of light that spark in somebody's brain to know, okay, based on this technology, here's the thing that I can go build now, which
Right.
is, I think, the fun part.
I think, and not to jump ahead, but I'm going to jump ahead just because the parallels that I can draw here are insane. You took that ambiguity of Next.js and you turned it into a product that basically, when somebody watched one of your videos, they're like, wait, I can build my own project with this. I can do this with this. In the same way, AI is extremely ambiguous. It's here's this chat box that can unlock trillions of opportunities for you. Go. And it's like some people need to be molded into what they can do with that. So I am very excited to see how you'll turn that in. I know you've only been, how long have you been at Cursor, if I may ask?
2 months.
Months?
2 months. You've already shipped a ton of great demos and explainers that are basically like that 0 to 1 step that kind of just show people, here's Cursor. It looks intimidating, but it's not. Just ask and treat it like a normal human. And I think that's going to be extremely valuable for people because you're just morphing that ambiguous cloud into just try this. And then that will click in their brain and be like, whoa, I can do this and this and this. Do you think
Yeah.
that like similar path is going to happen with AI?
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned that because it definitely is how I felt internally when I was kind of deciding that I wanted to rotate in and spend all this energy on teaching AI. The same thing that I felt in, wow, this technology is really powerful and it feels like a lot of people don't understand how to use it. That feeling I had when Next.js was just getting started was kind of the same feeling I had with learning to code with AI, except like 10 times more, because it's more than just JavaScript or TypeScript or React or that ecosystem. It's, people writing Java, people writing C++, people writing Python. Like it's any type of code. It's the whole act of our jobs of being engineers. And something I've thought a lot about now is the pedantic distinction between a developer and an engineer. And, for the longest time, I felt like there was this transition from front-end developers and back-end developers where you were kind of siloed or boxed in. Oh, I write the CSS, I write the JavaScript, I do the React, to more of like a product engineer and an infra engineer or DevOps engineer, because I think people started to become more generalists and the tools got better, the abstractions got better. And if I was primarily a backend engineer, React was so good that they could actually go and contribute maybe some of the front end changes to their feature they were adding, even if they weren't, design experts. The composition model, I think, just clicked in so many people's brains in the way that a backend engineer could contribute to the code base too. So they kind of became this full stack product engineer. That was actually the thing that got me really excited about Next.js is I was predominantly, I would say, a front end engineer. That was where my brain really clicked. And then Next.js was like, hey, you could just make this folder with a file that turns into an API. Just don't worry about going and setting up all this other infrastructure. Just make a file. And it really unlocked this new possibility of all these different backend things that you can do. So Next.js helped me write a lot more backend code than I had previously. So I think across the industry, we saw this transition from front-end, backend engineer split to more of like a product engineer, infra engineer split. But now there's an even bigger split or change happening with AI, where AI engineers are the most generalist of them all. Because when you learn to code with AI, you can do the whole thing. You can do front end, back end, product work, infrastructure work, GitHub Actions, YAML slinging. You can do, Docker, Kubernetes. You can do whatever you want. I mean, it's helpful to have the prior knowledge so that you can understand. You kind of know what good looks like, but it's easier than ever, I think, to learn something new if you have the ambition and the desire. So if tomorrow I want to learn TOML, I don't really know TOML syntax that well, to be honest. I mostly use YAML. I know that TOML exists. I don't really know like what people use it for, but if I really wanted to learn TOML tomorrow, I can just fire up Cursor and I can just ask, like, help me understand TOML. Let's do some TOML exercises and like learn the syntax if I really wanted to. So I think that transition is happening. And for me, the reason why I was very excited and kind of wanting to make this shift is I think anyone right now who writes code as a professional software engineer is going to have this, I don't know, this almost like grieving period of breaking up with, I love my code and I write this artisanal code that I think has to be perfectly handcrafted in this way, to what is my job again? And my job is to create good software. My job is to create a good product. And in a future, maybe it's not now, maybe it's a few years, maybe it's 5 years. But as it gets easier and easier and easier to create code, it's not really about the code. It's about the software as an end-to-end thing. And that's how well it runs, how well it looks, how well it functions. Yes, the code is important, but if you can have AIs generate the code and review the code, Your role is arguably even more important. It's just the jobs to be done have changed a bit in this world. So that's the thing I'm excited about teaching people.
Yeah, for sure. And that's exciting that you highlighted like the very undervalued benefit of Cursor. Like it's an excellent education tool. You can learn so much if you use it right,
Yeah.
and that the potential is absolutely tremendous. But yeah, curious about your day-to-day though. You actually ship quite a bit of code on your GitHub. We see over 3,000 contributions last year. Whoever said DevRels don't ship, or whatever. You probably vibe code a lot of it. Would that be fair to say?
I do write a lot of code. I now have the advantage of writing code for a very long time. So I know the places where I'm very proficient and it's very easy for me to just write a lot of code. And then there's other places where I need to step back and go a little slower and learn a bit more. So I kind of oscillate between, for my job, like day to day, I write mostly TypeScript, front end, back end, type code, and React code, because I'm working on our docs, our course platform. And then there are parts of Cursor's code base that I can contribute to. And some of that is more on the TypeScript side. I don't really do any of the Go or Rust stuff. So I do try to write a lot of code. I think it's helpful to keep your skills sharp. And that is both physically writing code hand by hand or line by line, but also using AI to generate the code and still review and understand how the code works. So I spend a lot of time doing that. I also do vibe code some stuff. 2 nights ago, I was vibe coding a Swift app because honestly, I haven't really used Swift UI. Back in the day, I did a lot of iOS apps right when Swift was like just coming out. And it was pretty cool, but you still had to drop into Objective-C all the time. And it was about that point where I was like, okay, I think I like the web better. But the Swift UI ecosystem and Xcode has gotten quite a bit better in 10 years or however long it's been. And I was vibe coding an app to try out the on-device AI that iOS ships with, and it was really interesting. I don't really know Swift that well. It's pretty easy to read. It's not too difficult to read, but that's a good example of more on the vibe code side versus for professional engineering day-to-day work. I'm mostly doing that, mostly like TypeScript stuff.
Yeah.
It's really interesting because I've done the same thing with Swift. And I actually use the Cursor CLI for it, but I think one of the defining parts for how good AI is at a certain language is how much change that language goes through. Like Swift has been relatively static for like most of the core features. So I whipped up a little banking app for me where I was like, I just want to see my balances, And I basically plugged in the API and it whipped out an app and then walked me through on how to essentially deploy it. And I think that extra step of it walking you through something, because everyone's always talking about like, oh, let's make AI super, super smart, super, super smart. But the inverse is also true. We need AI to not dumb it down, but make it so that way the individual at whatever level they're at can understand what's happening. And I think that's really valuable for people because AI can essentially meet them at whatever level they are in their coding journey. If they're beginner, medium, or senior dev, it can kind of match that energy immediately. Whereas like if you're reading a blog post, it's like it assumes you're a beginner, medium, or senior dev.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So the interesting part is a lot of we'll pivot back to the DevRel stuff. What do you say are like indicators for good DevRel work? Are there like metrics? Because a lot of companies, we were talking about this before the show, a lot of companies, they don't really know how to grade DevRel. And how do you assess, like either personally assess or externally, like those metrics or like performance?
I think it comes down to taste, and there's a taste in how to build good software and how to teach how that software was built or explain a concept. So maybe counterintuitively, but I find that some of the best DevRel work that I see, it's not from people who have done it for 15 years, or it's not from somebody whose job title is to do DevRel. It doesn't have to be that way. Anybody can do this type of educational work. And I think it stems from being or attempting to be a subject matter expert in something and really caring about the experience of how someone is going to read or consume that piece of content and how they're going to feel and how they're going to take it in. So you don't have to be the world's foremost leading expert on Swift. So let's imagine I wanted to do something on Swift. I kind of know how it works, but not really super well. But because I have this empathy for somebody in my shoes, kind of in the same boat, I might be able to do a video or a blog post or some kind of educational thing on, I write TypeScript day to day, and here's my experience, using Swift. Here's my experience vibe coding a Swift app. And you can make that connection for people who might be similar to you. Like here's how a feature in TypeScript corresponds to a Swift feature, or here are the things on the web that are missing on mobile and that I wish that I had on mobile, and vice versa. And I think that I see a lot of people fall into this trap of trying to make content that is basically null and void with ChatGPT now. Like how to set up my React and Redux application with ESLint 9 and blah, 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 blah. Like you can still do that. You'll probably win some SEO points and you might be able to do it very well. It's just not that interesting anymore, in my opinion. What I like to read are things that nobody else can put online. Nobody else could say what Lee's story is, because it's my lived story. It's my experience. Nobody can write a blog post about how, I had this experience in this internship and then it took me to this job. And then based on this experience on the job, I learned this thing. It's my story. And I would love to see more people kind of lean into that angle of the things that they learned on the job from their work, their opinion on how the world should work, how the software should be built, and their taste too. Because ultimately, the sum of the articles, blog posts, videos, stuff that you put out as a educator, as a DevRel person, you are having an opinion about what your taste is. So you are both, you need to consume a lot of good things so that you can understand what good looks like. And then you're kind of always pushing the boulder up the hill to try to be 1% better towards that version. Like I was just watching a video I'm doing for a course that we're releasing for Cursor on AI foundations. And I think it's some of the best video work I've done. And there's still like little things where I'm like, I could have done that better. And next time I'm going to do this little thing better. It's having this very unapologetic, but also, not brutal, I guess, but being very honest with yourself about if it is your best work or if it's not your best work, and being excited about the craft and just waking up and getting better at it. Like even my video setup right now, I like it and I put a lot of energy in getting the video set up better. And there's still like lots of little tweaks that I want to make it better that most people would probably look at and not even really see. But I've just consumed a lot of high quality video content. And I'm like, I know there's something that the video crew that MKBHD has that like they've got that dialed in. And like I don't have it dialed in like MKBHD has it dialed in with his red cameras and
you're gonna get the camera.
That's
arm.
the goal. I want to dial in like that.
Yeah. No, there's never like a stop to how much you can raise the bar. And like I really love the argument you also made about like quantifying impact of developer experience, developer relations. It's about taste. It's about producing something that is pleasant to people. And I actually like have seen some teams go the opposite way of just going soulless on numbers, on impressions, whatever.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that?
It all stems from a lack of understanding from leadership, CEO, whoever. If they're pushing you to do that, they just don't get what it means to do DevRel in the first place. And I think that is probably problematic because it will push you to do the wrong things. I think if you step back, and this is why I see some people talk about like, oh, like I can't believe we're still doing DevRel. DevRel's dead. And you talk to these people and you learn more about what they're expecting of what DevRel is. And it's almost always not what the people in the job do on the day to day. So when you go, like, for example, I joined Cursor, and you go and look at what the jobs to be done are. Somebody needs to do marketing for the products that you're releasing. That's both releases, but also teaching people how they work. That release is going to have some documentation. So that needs to be up to date and accurate and hopefully easy to consume. You want people to engage and follow you online. So you're going to put some stuff online on social media. Somebody's got to do that. And ideally, the content's good and interesting and it's not wasting people's time. It's very helpful. Ideally, the stuff you're putting out, you're showing people what you can build with the developer tool. So somebody's got to build those demos. It's going to take an engineer to actually go build that. The marketing person probably isn't going to build that. Bonus points if they do, but usually that's not what happens. And so on and so forth. You can go down the list of these jobs to be done. Somebody's going to do these jobs. So you can call it DevRel, you can call it whatever you want. It doesn't really matter. But this is why I've seen, I think what it comes down to is most people who were formerly software engineers don't want to be marketers. They have this aversion for marketing and they don't want to be labeled or bucketed into that category. Also because it's kind of a scary career shift where it's like, oh, I'm shifting from an engineer to be a marketer. Does that mean that every job I'm going to have from here on out is going to be something with marketing? Versus like, I'm still an engineer. I'm working on developer relations, developer experience, so call it. A lot of people who go into that route then end up eventually just saying, I'm going to go back to writing code. I'm just going to go back and be a normal engineer. And this was fun, but actually the other thing was great. So I think that's part of the reason why there's a little bit of the fragmentation between traditional marketing and developer marketing. But I think the jobs to be done are very real and somebody's got to do them. So why not DevRel?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a real job and it's definitely not dead. I love also how you said that some people believe DevRel is dead. I keep hearing this, by the way. You, I think, countered it perfectly. So you also mentioned earlier, right, about iterating and always pursuing perfection and how you improve your setup, improve your education style, whatever. I imagine receiving critical feedback might not be the very pleasant experience at times. And I'm curious what your mindset is on taking this feedback and turning this into something actionable to improve, maybe communicate to the product team, maybe own some changes in the product even. Curious to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, we'll start with feedback directed at yourself, and then we talk more about general product feedback. So I've had a variety of different managers in my career, all with different ways of delivering feedback. Some more blunt, more direct, others maybe more kind or maybe more passive. And I've kind of gotten to the point where I appreciate there is a way to do very direct feedback in a way that is still kind. And it's very hard to do, but it is after building trust with somebody where you know that they have your best interests in mind. They want you to be better. They are giving you this feedback because not to knock what you've done, just so that you can take that and you can take action on it and you can make things better. And over time, what that does when you start to treat that feedback as, as a positive thing, as a gift, as an opportunity to improve, it can really compound. And it can compound in a way where if you're open to hearing things that might suck, it might not be fun to hear that actually that video, it was a little confusing. There were some things I didn't really get how the first part went to the second part, and the audio quality was like, okay, but it could have been a little bit better. And some of the pacing and the editing was a little strange. Your reaction to that can either be like, man, F those people, they don't know what they're talking about. I know what I'm talking. I know how I'm doing this. I'm the person who made it. They're wrong. I'm right. Or your reaction to it can be like, okay, let's really introspect here and think about what they said. Is there anything they said there that's right? I don't have to agree with all of it. Some of it could be wrong. They might just have the wrong opinion. I'm the person who's supposed to have the taste. So if my vision for this thing is not what they said, then I just disagree and we can just move forward. But they might say some things where if you think about it, they're like, actually, you know what, they were right. And there's been a few times in my career where somebody gave me feedback and I sat on it for months. And months later, I was like, damn, You're right. Like, I definitely could have done that better, and I was just too stubborn to really see it, because it's harsh on your ego sometimes. You want to take pride in all the stuff you do, and when somebody calls your baby ugly, you're like, I don't want to believe you. So yeah, it's I've gotten better over time at taking feedback very unemotionally and just trying to use it to make the quality of the craft better 1% every single day.
Yeah. I was going to say that unemotional detachment from the feedback is interesting. I was listening to a show or a talk the other day, and when someone comes at you and they're upset with feedback, 9 times out of 10, they're not exactly upset at you. They're upset that the thing that you produced didn't meet their needs. And if you can like take that third perspective and be like, okay, I get that they're upset, but if we put the anger and the frustration aside, why do they feel like this didn't meet their needs? And then if you can shift and pivot and understand why that happened, I found that amazingly helpful for my own content to be like, they don't hate me. They hate that my solution didn't work for them. And now I just have to refine that solution so it works for more people. So,
Yeah. Even the biggest trolls, if you really listen and you really step back and think about it, there's usually some truth in there. Like, even the people who really, really are frustrated or they're really mad, they're usually right about something. So you have to really take that feedback and think about it. Sometimes people are just assholes, for sure. But most of the time, even when they're pissed off, if you trace it back, they're probably pissed off in a way because they tried the product, like you said, and it just didn't work out how they expected. And there's something to learn from that.
yeah, I agree. So, obviously, the work of a DevRel, you've got a bunch of hats. You've got to market this. You've got to maybe build your own demos. You've got to record videos. You've got to work on scripts. You've got to work on writing. You've talked about like intensity and recovery time and how important those both are. What sort of rules and sort of guidelines did you develop for yourself to keep passion from like turning into burnout?
Yeah, I think that for me, when I'm really motivated by and excited by the work, it doesn't feel like work. It's more like play. And that's the ideal state, is that the thing you're working on, you are just so intrinsically motivated by that when you wake up in the morning, you're thinking about it. When you're in the shower, you're thinking about it. You go on a walk and you kind of let your mind wander. And then all of a sudden you're thinking about, oh, I could probably do that thing just a little bit differently. And that's the ideal state that you want to be chasing towards. What I found in my career is that any time that I'm straying from the light there and I'm getting further away from that, it's probably a time for me to step back and reconsider what I'm doing, what I'm working on. Maybe I need to change, my job a little bit. Maybe I need to change the role and responsibility, or put down a project and start a new project, or work on a different team, or XYZ things. So for me, really trying to listen to my own motivation, I think, is part of what helps me navigate the barometer of whether I'm excited by and happy about the work I'm doing, or if I'm on a path towards burnout. And I think the other thing is, as a side effect of doing good work, that usually comes with people who also like to do good work, following along or wanting to work together, or tuning in and watching, more of the things that you do, or subscribing or following, or whatever the metric is. And over time, that can lead to a point where there's just more people who are around. And I definitely had a little bit of a struggle adjusting to that, trying to figure out whose opinions I should care about, because there was more voices, more opinions. And it was, as a person who, when I was getting started, I really tried to listen to what everybody said and to try to pull some nugget of truth from all of those things. It did get harder as there were more people having opinions. So I had to get very good at the unemotional part of listening to feedback. And then also just starting to figure out the places where there's no point in me even entering that space, because that's not helpful feedback. Like, there's nothing good to be gained from that I don't know, subreddit or Hacker News thread where none of these people want to see you win anyway, you're not going to change their opinion. This better off just not even engaging.
Yeah. So curious then, how do you filter for voices and good feedback that you need to adjust to?
Yeah, I think the best feedback that I get, it is usually somebody who's upset, and they've taken the time out of their day to write very detailed, precise feedback about where the product did not work. And it's not usually like wrapped up in a nice bow and like a happy, like, oh, this was great. By the way, this one thing was pretty bad. It's usually, at least online, people who are upset and they're very detailed. And usually when you ask follow-up questions, they are very happy to give you more details, and they are happy that you are listening. So they really want to get to a better state. They want the product to be better. Their frustration is that they see the potential or what could be of the product, and they just want to help you achieve that. So I think that's one. The second one is you just get better feedback in person a lot of times, and you can do it in it's not like you're sitting down and you're having a product feedback session with 100 people, which you can do. But the best feedback I find is when you're at a random developer meetup and somebody says, oh, you know what, actually, I did use Cursor the other day and it didn't work. I tried to do this thing and I clicked on the button and it didn't actually work the way I expected it to. And you're like, oh, nobody's told us that yet. Like, I'm glad to hear that. You should send me more details. I'd love to fix that. There are all of these little micro paper cuts that happen in a product daily, and 95% of them go unreported. They just say, oh, that kind of sucked. And then they just close the app and then move on with their day. Or worse, they just delete the app or uninstall it. Like, it takes a lot of energy actually to give feedback on something. And you have to, even the most pissed off person on Twitter, you have to open up the app. You have to take your thoughts. You have to put it down into something. You have to tag me and say, Lee Rob, what the heck? This thing doesn't work. Please fix the product. Like, that took a lot of energy. And most people just don't even do that. So you have to learn how to take the emotion out of it and then kind of tune in on the people who are willing to give a little bit more detailed and precise feedback.
Awesome. Wow. We're learning a lot about DevRel. And one thing I'm particularly curious about from personal experience so far operating in DevRel is hiring people on your team.
Mm-hmm.
How do you screen somebody for DevRel? As you said, like, it's quite hard to determine who would be good at the job, and it's usually not somebody who is a DevRel. It's their first ever experience in speaking to the public. How do you find people who can do everything a DevRel does?
Yeah, I usually screen on two things, and this will depend on the level of experience too. It's basically taste and potential. So someone might have great taste and it seems like they have a lot of potential, and they might be just fresh out of school. Like, they might not have a bunch of experience doing this type of work, but you can kind of get a feel that it seems like this person has a strong opinion on what good looks like and is surprisingly well tuned in to the type of taste that I resonate with or that I'm trying to put out into the world. And I think that's a way to prevent the bias from, trying to find a DevRel person who's been doing the job for a long time, because there's really not that many people who have been doing it for a very long time. And usually when they have, they're very kind of set in their ways. They've been doing it in a certain way, and it's a little bit harder for them to adjust or adapt for maybe a different way. Now, that's not everyone, for sure. But I think that helps find people who maybe are, hidden gems, I would call it, and try to invest in helping them kind of calibrate their taste profile and making it align with how you see the world, and then giving them a lot of feedback on what good looks like so that they can level up the quality of their work. So it's taste, it is potential, and it's like agency / focus. So for somebody who has a lot of agency, they'll just go learn how something works. They'll write the blog post. They'll go make the video. If the output or the quality of that output is 80%, but they're receptive to making it better, and they kind of know what good looks like, they have this feeling internally. They know it's not 100% great yet, but they need that feedback to help calibrate and push them towards the right direction. And I think that's been really helpful for myself in hiring people and trying to help them grow in their career. And then also just kind of myself as I'm getting better and trying to improve at the craft, is trying to surround myself with people who I think have good taste and that can help me refine my taste.
Yeah. It's valuable to surround yourself with people that are going to not constantly uplift you, but constantly be there to support you. Now, we've been talking a lot about DevRel, and that's been a primary point of your career. But if I am correct, you've also been involved in some events like Next.js Conf. I'm interested. Next.js Conf kind of blew up and it's a massive convention. What did you learn about like that convention and like spotlighting community builders without losing like the sort of narrative of Next.js Conf? What were some of your experiences doing that? I'm interested.
Yeah, funny story. When I joined Vercel in 2020, I had only been on the job for a few months, and I think maybe it was Lindsay, who's the VP of engineering at Vercel, was like, "Hey, we need some help building this conference platform. Do you want to help?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure. Like, let's build this thing out." So it was like me and him and a few others who were building out this platform, and it was kind of the first, in my opinion, and I could be wrong, somebody can fact check me on this, but it felt like one of the highest quality produced online events for a developer event, because this was, post COVID. This was 2020 in October. So everyone was just shifting to online events, and most people were doing like a simple webinar for their conference. Like there wasn't really this detailed and thorough online experience. And we went really over the top with it. Like we had the tickets that you could share your ticket on social media, and you had your nice ticket number, and it had the fun little gradient and animated cards and stuff. And that, I feel like, just changed online events, where at least in the developer space, I've seen so many events now do the same kind of badge ticketing card that we did back in 2020. So that was really fun. In terms of what I learned about events from Next.js Conf, there's like a laddering of events. There's on the smallest scale, your very specific local meetup with, let's call it 40 people. And then all the way up to the top, it's like massive user conference, massive enterprise conference at a 5,000 capacity venue or something bigger than that if you're a major company. And I think that somewhere along that path, a lot of developer companies shift into doing the bigger and bigger conferences, and they lose the soul of what it meant to be a developer event. And that's why I feel like sometimes you go to these kind of stuffy corporate conferences and they don't really feel like they're targeted for developers. It's more for the enterprise buyer and for the executives. And I think a lot of the problem comes when those two things are mixed together too much. And you can do this well sometimes. It's possible to get the devs and the execs in the same room and have it still feel good. It's not impossible. Most of the time, though, I think it seems like it doesn't get done very well. And one thing we tried to do with Next.js Conf was make it that space where the developers could come and get good content from developers and not have it feel like too much of this is really a marketing pipeline goal. We have to get X number of people here and X number of pipeline. When you focus on just making a good event for the developers, the pipeline and stuff comes as a side effect of that. Yes, there's effort in getting the right people in the room and doing a lot of outreach. And so I have a lot of kudos to give for our marketing folks at Vercel who worked on that. But also, I think that at the end of the day, the thing that gets people to come and show up is good content, good products, good speakers, and they're interested in what you're going to speak about. And you got to find a way to make the content interesting. So one of the things I'm probably the most proud of through 5 years of Vercel is all the different keynotes. I was able to help out with all of them and be involved in most of them. And I think over the years, we just got 1 to 5 to 10% better every single time, to where this last year's one I think was our best one yet.
Awesome. Yeah. I myself love Next.js Conf. I feel like it is indeed one of the best developer event offerings out there. But anywho, I would love to chat a little bit more about your new role. So you now work at Anysphere on Cursor, and it's been a few months, you said. I'm really, really curious. What has your experience been so far? What has been your mandate since day one? What do you work on?
Yeah. I got very interested in not just coding with AI like autocomplete or GitHub Copilot, Cursor tab type experience, but coding with agents about 6 months ago, I would say. And for me, that was kind of the point where I really started to think, okay, this has some ramifications. Like this is probably going to change the day-to-day work of what it means to be a software engineer in a world where you can have 3 or 4 coding agents writing the code for you, and then another one to review and touch up the code. And then you push to a PR and you have a code review bot on there, which can go and check for errors. And then maybe when you deploy to production, you have more AI agents who check the code. And it just made me realize I wanted to be surrounded by people who this was all they were thinking about and trying to figure out what this looked like together. So joining the team and everyone who works on Cursor has been really fun. There's a lot of very smart people, a pretty small team actually, which is fun, and a lot of former founders. So a lot of synergy there with Vercel. Vercel hired a lot of former founders. I think Cursor, Anysphere has also hired a lot of former founders, or at least has founder energy. So I would say I'm the type of person who I'm delusional that I would like to be a founder, but also pragmatic that like it probably won't happen now. I don't know, it might. If the right idea hits me, maybe, or if I decide I'm looking for a new challenge, maybe. But I like to say that I have founder energy, which maybe is just like another way of saying I try to have and develop lots of agency to just do things, try new things, build new things, and maybe ask for forgiveness, not permission sometimes, which most of the time works out in your favor. So yeah, I've been at Cursor for a few months and have been spending most of my time on the biggest problem that I found. And the biggest problem that I found is that there are millions of developers starting to use AI to help them write code. And like a large percentage of them don't really understand how the models work yet. And I get it. It's like you feel like you're writing code in the normal way. And then I have this chat where I can just ask questions and then it generates some code. And great, this is awesome. But I have really started to see it from the outside and then on the inside, spending all my time and energy on this even more, where I start to work with these developers and I say, okay, well, the reason why the quality went down is because you were using 90% of the context window, or you tried to give it just a ridiculous amount of information. And it was hard for the model to understand how to find what was good versus what was not was good. And a couple times the response I got was, wait, what's context again? And I was like, okay. So there's like a decent number of people who don't yet know what some of these foundations are. So for me, the number one thing I wanted to work on that we'll launch here very soon is getting out this educational material on what are these AI foundations. And all of the model labs have been working so hard on building the thing that they haven't really built a lot of the educational stuff either. So like there's really not a ton of great content on the internet that explains what the foundations are of AI models, and more practically how you use them. Not necessarily about machine learning or training your own models. I think there's content about that, but for the average developer, they're not training their own models. They're not learning machine learning. They just want to be productive, and they have a set way of writing code today where they feel pretty productive in. And they heard, okay, well, I've got new tools like Cursor that can make me more productive. And maybe they try it out and it doesn't live up to that expectation for them. They try it and, oh, the code that generated actually wasn't that good. Or I tried this thing and it didn't really end up the way I wanted it to. And I find that when I have started to talk to some of these people and spend some time with them and I explain like, okay, here's how models work. Here's what a hallucination is. Here's context. Here's the context window. These models do tool calling, and then it can go search your code. It can apply code changes. And then you have this agent, and this agent just does that in a big loop. And you can ask it the question. It can loop over. It can call a bunch of different files. It can make some code changes. And then I see like some of the light bulbs go off in their head. We're like, okay, so it's not really a black box. Like there is a way to kind of harness the power of the model. And I would say limit the number of downsides, because the models inherently are probabilistic. They're going to get things wrong. There will be things they generate and go, yeah, the code's actually not that good. But the key is to look at that and not say, okay, I'm just going to throw the whole thing away. It's like, how do I limit the downsides based on the current state of the tools, products, technology, assuming they're going to keep getting better over time. So I would assume that in a year, at least based on this progress so far, the models will be at least twice as good as what they are today. So knowing that, I mean, for me, it's hard not to look at the way I'm writing code and be like, okay, I should probably learn this stuff. If the model's going to be, at least double its intelligence and maybe its speed in a year, well, that has a pretty profound change on how I will generate code. So,
yeah, wow, you covered a lot of ground. So, yeah, if you were to give a very high-level overview of what it takes for a person to adopt AI assistant software development, right, in their workflow, like, what are some of the concepts from a rookie to an expert that you need to go through and learn about?
Yeah, so first and foremost, it is that the software that we've, all been writing for the, most of this time has been deterministic software. So I code something that says 1 + 1 = 2. Like it's put into the bits and bytes. And with large language models, it's not that way. You might not get the exact same result for the exact same input. And that's a feature and a bug. Like there are ways to minimize the number of hallucinations that you get back, but also the fact that the models can hallucinate is kind of the secret sauce. Like it's kind of the special thing, is that you can put in this thing and it can hallucinate. It can just like magically come up with a pretty coherent series of paragraphs and text. So it's kind of the amazing part about it all. So when you ask a model to do some coding task and you get some code back and maybe it's not the code that you expected, then you have to ask yourself, is the information that I gave the model the same thing that I would give to maybe a new coworker that I was onboarding and was just sitting beside me at the desk? So a new coworker joins, sits beside me at the desk. I pull up my computer. I'm probably going to say, okay, so our repo is a TypeScript and React application. Here's how this part of the code base works. This one over here has got this kind of nasty business logic. Like that's like all the old legacy deprecated stuff. Just don't even worry about that stuff. Your job today, we're going to go through this, linear issue. We're going to solve this thing. Here's how you can get set up locally. If you have any questions or if you need anything, like I'm right here. We can just pair program together. Like you're giving all of this context about how the code base works, how the system works, the business requirements. So when you ask a model, like, build me $1 billion SaaS, make no mistakes, it's probably not going to give you the result that you want unless you have high quality context in. So both you put in high quality context, you get out high quality responses. So the whole art of context engineering, I think, is a skill to be learned and developed. And then it also answers the next question when your new coworker has been coding for some time. They've been using the AI tools. And then a couple days down the road, they say, they knock on my door. Hey, Lee, it was really good on the first day, but on day 3, it's actually been not as good. And I go and I look at their editor, I look at Cursor, I see the little percentage window. They're at 90% of the context window. It's like, okay, well, imagine you're trying to find a needle in a haystack, and you've got a really big haystack. It's going to be very hard to find that needle. That's the same way that a model, when you give it just a whole bunch of stuff and then you give it a new information, it's going to continue and use all of the additional information that you had in the conversation. So you probably want to start a new chat. It's like you had the working memory of this working with this model, and you're going to delete it and you're going to start a new fresh working memory. And again, it's kind of a feature and a bug. I think over time, it'll be great as models get better about remembering the context over many days or months, just like a coworker. It's one of the nice things about humans is that when I onboard a coworker and they get better and better and better, there's this continual learning. And then in a couple months, like they're ramped up, they're really productive. With the current state of AI models, it's not really like that. You start a new chat, it's a fresh working memory. You're starting from, maybe not 0, but you're starting over. And that's where this art of context engineering is really important right now, because if you're codifying all the things that you would need to give to the model and you start a new chat, then you can just attach those into the new chat. So that might be design decisions, to-dos. It could be rules of your code base. It could be the actual issue that you're working on, like the specific task. If you give all that stuff into the model, well, now it has all the information. So that's a long-winded answer.
Yeah, no, I think that's really good, because a lot of people see agents as I start it and I wash my hands of it. I don't want to talk to it ever again.
Yeah.
But I've found great success in telling it, if you have a question, I probably know this code base on like code bases that I've been working on. I probably know this code base a little bit better than you in some aspects and some of the business logic. So I'm always like, if you have questions, ask me. And if you pair a program, it's weird to say, with AI, you kind of get that iterative feedback loop. So that way it doesn't generate for like 30 minutes. And then you look at the code and you're like, man, there's production. We got to reset this Git branch. But yeah, I think that pair programming with AI is very valuable.
Well, and to your point, there's also something you said there where it's like you let it generate for 30 minutes is another thing I see a lot of beginners do, where they have one chat that's very, very long, so they don't start new chats for new features. And they also ask for too ambitious of prompts. So they say something that's maybe a little vague, and it's maybe trying to do like 10 or 15 different things at once. So generally, my heuristic is I want to provide enough context up front and be specific enough that the model should actually get it right in maybe 2 or 3 prompts. Like most of my chats, I'm only using 20 or 30% of the context window. And if I go further than that, then I'm really building something complex, or I'm trying to do some research or some planning. And that helps you kind of dial in, okay, did I give enough context up front? Because if I didn't, and it's kind of going down the wrong path, then I needed to be more precise in what I was actually trying to do.
Yeah. I think that's great. So we are just about at our time, and we'll go ahead and enter our wrap up. You've got a lot of great information. You're going to continue creating a lot of great content. Where can listeners, watchers find your content and continue learning from you after they're done with the show?
Yeah, leerob.com is where I have some of the things I've wrote about. And then on x.com/leerob, I'll post all the new Cursor videos and everything else.
Awesome. That's great. And we always close out with this question. I don't know if you've heard of it before, but if you could go back 10 years into the past and talk to yourself, what would be one piece of advice you would share?
When I was, 10 years ago, when I was getting my first software engineering professional job, I thought that getting a job at Facebook or Google or Amazon and being like a staff distinguished engineer, I thought that was what making it meant. I thought that was the ultimate goal of this career, was to land a job at a big tech company and work really hard, move up the career ladder, be the super distinguished experienced engineer. And I just wish, if I could go back in time, that I would have known that there are many different ways that this software technology career path can go. You just have to follow your curiosity, because you might not realize where that's going to take you, and be willing to try new things, even if they're a little scary or different than what the normal path that most people take is.
Cool.
Wow.
That is, yeah, it's been on par with all of the other information you've bestowed on us today. High quality. Well, we just want to thank you so much for coming on Next Dev. It's been a real honor to have you on, and the amount of information that you've given us and that you've continued teaching. I've learned, Goose has learned, and I know our listeners have learned. So just thank you again for coming on and bestowing this knowledge.
Thank you.
Of course. Thank you guys for watching. Thank you to CodeRabbit for sponsoring Next Dev Live, and we will see you guys next time.
Cheers.